joining us in this quite exceptional times, and I think it's great to at least escape for a moment from the realities of what we're heading. But it's great to talk about this for a moment, just professional things. So my name is Antti Kyölä. Like Charles said, I'm head of design and UX at Sports Digital and at Suunto. And today I will tell you about how going mobile actually changed everything that we pretty much did a few years back. Just to introduce myself briefly. So I've been in the business, I've been in design business for about a little over 20 years myself. And I actually come from a product design background. So I've been doing all kinds of stuff during my career. And like Harri said, pretty much half of Finland at the time was working for Nokia. So I also have a background at Nokia. And I've been building mobile phones. That little turquoise thing, by the way, is the best-selling mobile phone in the world, according to Wikipedia. So I'm very proud of the team that we did it with. We've been building watches, mobile phones, mobile accessories, and mostly now we will be talking about digital experience and building that through the Suunto mobile app. But just to get you guys a bit of a context of what Suunto actually is about, most of the Finns here in the call probably know Suunto. But I'm going to run you a really brief video to get you in the mood of what the brand stands for. Let's hope the sound works now.
Every adventure begins with a single step. So does every failure. The path to success is often the same as failure most of the way. The only difference, making the right decisions at the right time. If Suunta in Finnish means direction, Suunto means the right direction. Experience by Suunto.
All right, so that's very briefly about the brand itself. It's a really cool Finnish brand. It's been out there since 1936, and the purpose of the brand is really to equip and inspire people to live an adventurous and active life. So really stand for the adventure, and that's reached through being really active through your life. Now, how are we actually serving our consumers? Let's roll back about 8 years in our history. And about 8 years ago, the world used to be really simple for us as designers, as developers, as engineers. So we actually had, 8 years ago, we introduced our first GPS training watch. It was like real cool product. So you can actually go training, it knows your location, it knows your speed, distance, all your body metrics. And it was a sales success. That was called Suunto Ambit. And then we had also introduced our web service. So Sports Diary and Sports Service, which is basically a web-based service, a web client service with a cloud backend. And we had a really simple idea that people would go training, then you come home, you take a shower, then you plug in your watch to your PC, and then download your training data and start going through those statistics. And the whole idea of this service was that you have a lot of statistics. And we were serving like really pro athletes or wannabe pro athletes or adventurers, and they just want to see a lot of this data. And we had about 23 different variables of parameters to show in every single exercise, and kind of was cool and simple to us. And then things got a bit more complicated. So in about a year or so into the first generation of this watch, we started thinking that, wait a minute, we actually wanted to make this a bit easier for the users. Ironically, making it easier for the users made it much more complicated for us in-house. So we still had the watch. We had the second generation, I think, and third generation of that same product coming out. And we thought that this this cable connection would be a bit clunky and felt a bit outdated. So we thought that let's build a wireless connection, wireless solution. And people actually now, we introduced the mobile app, which is basically just a companion app. So you would just connect that mobile app with your mobile phone, with your watch, and then you could download your statistics again after a training, taking a shower. You don't have to plug in the cable. You just download the stats and you still go to your web browser, open up that service, and then look at your stats. So the web was still king, but we thought that this is kind of cool that you don't have to plug in anything anymore. Then and we got greedy. but we got greedy for the user's good. So I think that's kind of justifies a bit. So we thought it would be really nice to have a quick view of your training already before you go to PC. So what if you actually could have a summary of your training? And we started building these views. The app started getting more complicated, more feature rich. So you could actually see your moves, your as we call them, your activities on the mobile. So maybe there's a moment after your training or before your shower, you actually want to know how fast did you run. But we actually kept on this track. So we started building more and more these things. So we started building social features. So you'd actually have this live feed where you can see where your friends have been going, what been training. We even thought about having some commercial messages through the app. But in the end, still the web was king. So we was like, basically, whatever we did for the mobile phone, in the end, the web was kind of king of the hill in our minds. So that was something where we actually put most of our focus. And we were building these really fancy user flow charts. So we really thought serious about whole flow. We had this idea how people would behave, how you actually get inspired, you prepare and try, engage, setting goals, etc. So we built this really like serious looking models that we actually believed in ourselves. And what was good, and it was still relatively simple. It was more complicated. We had some challenges with how we tie in the mobile application. We had to build this whole connectivity layer, etc. But we were feeling that it's still under control. And then, as in life, something happens. And ironically, what happened then as well, this thing actually came from China. So our learning came from China. And we were doing one of our annual business trips. I think I try to go to China at least once a year, because I think the rate of change of technology and how people adapt to that is so fast that just being less than once a year, you actually are missing out many of the big things. So roll back to, I think this was like spring 2016. And we one of those business trips in China, a local team had organized, hey, let's meet with our target users. So we had a bit of a user workshop there. And I remember this one lady, really smart lady, was also avid runner, meeting us and saying that, by the way, guys, your watches look beautiful, but your user experience sucks. And actually what she told us was that no Chinese user would go and open up the PC outside work unless they have to go to the tax office or the China Railway. So people just don't use their PCs, which is like totally unheard for us. But you know, what do you mean? They don't use PCs. So we started then getting more serious and thought, okay, we need to go back to China and really learn more about this. So we set on this path that we need to get this mobile app more prominent. And I love this picture. This is one of my favorite pictures ever. So we actually we did a couple of consumer studies with an agency, and then towards the end of 2016, we went to China ourselves and we organized this co-creation workshop week. And we were sitting in one room at Amasport's offices in Shanghai. We had users next door with the facilitator. We had live feed from the other room. Then we had the simultaneous translation, which was great. So this lady in pink shirt would tell us in English what the guys are saying. And then we have simultaneous design. So Lasse here is actually putting in new features. At the time we're using Flinto, so he was building quick prototypes and then carrying them to next door and showing the users that, is this what you want? So we really were excited that, wait a minute, let's make this app really prominent. And I think this was like really fun times that we got really excited. And what actually happened that we built our first concept, and we got really, really happy about the idea. I still think it's a cool idea. We had this like really prominent first home screen, and this colorful design. And we really fell in love with the design. We started building all these other concept features for it. So we were building activity feed, really like how you get real-time activation for the users and see what your buddies are doing. We built this in rich summaries where you really bring these prominent visuals and overlay them with data graphics and really make it like cool and shareable social objects. But we even thought about micro-coaching, and you have to think that at the time Suunto didn't really speak through the service by natural language. We were mostly showing people graphs and data. So this was also news to us. And then privacy, obviously, when you go mobile, you have to think much more carefully about the whole privacy thing. This was pre-GDPR, but we still have to think of that. And this is exciting times. This is like towards end of 2016, beginning of 2017. We go really that, yes, we're going to have finally a mobile first experience. And our leadership was also behind the idea, and we started rolling. And then actually somebody made the question, the calculation, that how much does it actually cost? And the reality hit us, and we realized that actually it is very expensive to go from this pretty easy HTML-based web service and really start building a mobile app in 2 different platforms, in iOS and Android, from scratch. So everything, we had no assets to build on. We had no baseline code. We would just literally be starting from scratch, pretty much, because we felt that the original app that we had wasn't really good base to develop. And I think that kind of was leading us to the first change that actually started coming in. So what actually had happened, and this sounds silly in hindsight, but you know, like companies are often like looking at things from their current viewpoint. So we had already acquired a brand called Sports Tracker. So this was basically a startup, a spin-off from the Nokia days, and was a really good mobile application for sports tracking. And we had it, and the idea was that we'll develop that into something where we can get people to activate people to use AMA Sports brands like Suunto, Atomic, Wilson, etc., and also learn about their users. But we never ever really had a like realistic plan for integrating that with anything else. But we started looking at this, that okay, realizing the cash needed for building something from scratch, we started realizing that wait a minute, you could actually take this app, this code base, and redesign it to also cater for Suunto, which sounds really natural at the moment. We had to build the connectivity layer because the sports tracker at the time was not really meant to connect with anything else than the heart rate belt. But apart from that, we were able to actually reuse the basic assets, skin them, redesign them. And we were skeptical because we really had those cool ideas about the design originally. But then when we actually got into the design, and as you can see, you can actually build, you can use the base, you can build use the same assets, but you can still build like a unique feel to the brand. And the good thing was that the Sports Tracker already had like really good UX. It was basically a 5-star app in the App Store and Play Store. It had analytics tools in there and pretty good libraries in place. So that was the first change, that we really realized that, well, let's actually go forward. We can reuse something that we already have, and we don't have to build everything from scratch. The second change that we had was the UX design philosophy. And when we actually started rolling out the idea of the project about getting the app out, I think we hit this another reality that people actually started being skeptical in the company. We had had already, by the time we started, the Moose Count web service was, I think, 6 years old, and it was seriously being developed. So there's a lot of skepticism in the company from people that, well, you can't do that on small screen. You can't do certain things on a small screen. You will need the big screen. And to counter that, then we really had to be focusing on like how you make the designs work on the small screen. One of the key things, or the pet hates from the guys who loved the big screen experience was the route plan, as you can see on this page. So we had this great feature that we actually have mapped about 250 million exercises on the planet as a heat map. And then anywhere you go, if you happen to come to Helsinki first time, you can open up our app, you can look at those, open up the map. If you want to go running, you just select run, you will see where people have gone running, and you can actually build a track or route and import into your Suunto watch and then go running. So it's a great feature. And I think that we actually proved that you can make this feature work on a small screen. I think it works fantastically, and I encourage everybody to try it. It's for free. Just try and see how it works. So we were actually proving that things can be done on a small screen, which sounds, in hindsight, also almost silly, but it was big. Then the third change that we went through when going mobile was the DevOps. And I'm now using this word very loosely. I apologize if I'm misusing it, but I think that here the change was like most profound. And we probably still as a company don't really realize or capture like how big a change was. So I'm trying to use this illustration to kind of show you how far we came from. So this is the worldview in the Middle Ages. It's like the Earth-centric model. You know all this story. If you read your historics, that people thought really that the Earth is the universe, the center of the universe, and everything else revolves around it. And obviously, if you've done any history of the astronomy, you know that because world isn't like this, the astronomers at the time really had to build these crazy ways to capsulate how would the planets really move. And for us, this was like, we were also operating in a way that the watch programs, the wristwatch, the sports watch and diving computer programs were the center of the universe at Suunto. And I think it's important because these watches have to go through certain testing. They have to be built in the most meticulous standards. So it's of course important that you have this like steady waterfall-ish process for building these. But the problem was that when we actually started getting more active with the mobile app, we realized that, well, the app actually doesn't follow the same rules. First of all, the app is actually going to serve more than just one watch, so you can't just follow the one watch program schedule and then go and trying to start again. You kind of have to serve multiple programs. Also, people are not really, they are not expecting the mobile apps just to be updated once a year, maybe like the watches, but they expect those watches to be updated several times a year. So we really had to go through this operational model where we actually couldn't follow the same old waterfall model for the watch R&D programs. We had to go agile. So we started building up our own teams for the mobile development. We started going truly agile, like Harry was explaining and Lindsay was explaining. So we also went and started using similar methods and similar principles and tools. So, and in all of this also, we launched our first beta. So we actually never in our history of 80 plus years, we have never launched anything as beta. We have, of course, the field testing community, but we never launched anything as beta. So we really publicly invited people that we're going to use this, we're going to launch this app as beta, we'll be coming out later and invite you to give public feedback about it. And we were so scared, but I think it was just so good as a learning for us when people started giving us feedback live, and we would really be able to learn so much faster on it. Okay, then the next change that we actually went through, this was the analytics piece. So if you actually look at when you go to mobile, you realize that there's a massive opportunity that you can be much more analytics driven and learn about the consumers faster than ever, because the mobile really isn't easy. It's a natural way to really utilize analytics, much more so than the mobile, because than the web, because it's all the time in the real-time connection with the net. It's all the time with you. We're carrying with us. The usage rate is really high because you fondle it all the time. And there's a lot of tools that are readily available for the mobile platforms. So we actually started we started using a tool called Amplitude, and the data started flooding in. We set up an analytics team, small analytics team, and they started training and following these together with the development. The interesting thing was also that this also had a change in the way that we actually rate our work. So we've been previously building up these features. So we built up our roadmap and features and said, okay, we might have a specialist in the team who says that, well, I've spoken to X number of runners or triathletes, and I know that this feature is super important for them. But we actually never measured afterwards how will this happen? How does this actually work? And through the data, we were actually able to build this, engagement matrix. So really looking into like, how many people are using a certain feature we create and how often they're using. And obviously you want to go to this red box of primary value. You want to go in there and like most of the users, like all of your users will be using all the time. That's a killer feature you want to build. And then you might have these secondary features where, not everybody is using, but everybody's using, but maybe just one, like setting up your rear view mirror in your car or whatever would be the case. You do it once if you drive a car alone, but you wouldn't probably buy a car without that nowadays. Then you might have segment value where there's a very small group of people, but they use it all the time, so they're very loud. and the niche value. And when we started looking at the data, we realized that it was really humbling experience that, well, you know, something I thought or we thought might be a primary value, a really killer feature, ended up being niche, not really used. And obviously through the data, you can also look into that in more detail. And that leads us to the next change. So for our users, we also realized that we don't really follow up that how are people using the stuff that we create? How does it really work out there? So if you go back to this fantastic route planning that we did, and this great feature, we believe that, you know, it's so easy and we proved that you can build these routes on mobile and make it really useful and usable. We started actually doing the data and analyzing the data. So what actually happened? And we got this terrible realization that nobody's using it. So you got people coming from map screen, and we thought that, you know, vast majority will be building routes. And like, what? They are not doing it. They're not building it. And we kind of started then digging deeper into the amplitude and really like started engaging our own users that, hey, guys, you need to understand that how people are behaving when they're actually using the feature that you are creating. And this is like super interesting. So you can go forward, you can backwards, you can analyze really in amplitude. How do these things work? How are my users, where are my users actually ending up on that map screen that I thought? Are they really creating route, or are they just going somewhere else and come back frustrated? And training our designers to use these tools is one thing. But then the other thing that we also wanted to do is that, and we learned to do, was like building these triggers already doing design. So actually when you start designing a feature, you start not just designing it, but you start building these triggers in which parts of this UI flow do I want people to touch? And then actually having those, putting almost like a minefield, pardon the expression, that you have those triggers in place so that you can actually go and analyze how the feature performed. Because in the old world, if somebody didn't use it, and you might just read the feedback from the field test users, and then you would abandon the feature. Okay, route planning would just suck. But here actually, we are now able to look into the features and then improve actually the user experience already through the usage. So that was a big learning. So our designers really are now starting to behave and act in a way that, you know, we start thinking already in the design stages, how do we get the data in? Then there's one more change in this whole thing, which is the whole big user engagement. That how do we actually engage with users with the web service that we had back in the day? We really didn't have that much of an engagement through the users. We would mass email them if we wanted to get the message through. We would have obviously our social media channels, but there wasn't really an active feedback as such to speak of. So what we actually can do, that we can now target the message. So within the mobile app, we can actually bring them updates and the messages. So we can bring those as a pop-up images. We can bring them as a lock screen messages to users. And really, we can make those messages appear as part of the activity feed already. So it feels like a natural flow of the user's flow. And what's also more important, that we can actually look at these consumers. So we actually, through the data, we can know that who are the users that might be most interested in using, for example, the route creation. So we can actually target and tailor the input and the message in the app, so it doesn't feel like spam. And we can actually get in much more detail. So we can try through A/B testing which of these, not just the features, but also the messages work. So we can encourage people that, hey, we got this fantastic route planning feature. We can actually, this is how you do it. Here's a tutorial. Please try it. Please give us feedback. So this whole engagement went on steroids, which help us to be much more faster in really like targeting the users, but also learning from them and having a meaningful dialogue. So if I'm kind of crashing through this story and trying to wrap it up, so what really has changed? So that all sounds cool and sounds like we learned a lot during those couple of years. So where do we stand as a team now? How do we operate what we learned? So first of all, the most important thing is that the mobile app now is treated as a product. It's treated as an equal product to the watch program. So watch is no longer the king, it's no longer just the center of the universe. Obviously, it is important that we sell watches, but the app is a product. And what we did is that we actually nominated our first dedicated product owner. So there's a PO, and she's running the whole product development and the business development for the mobile app. We launched our dedicated Android and iOS development teams. So there's a dedicated team lead for both, and they're running and building up the app because they really are two different animals, almost two different products from iOS and Android apps, even if we try to go for the feature and design parity as much as we can. Then we have dedicated budget. So budget actually used to be dictated by the watch programs, but now we have dedicated budget for the mobile development. And then obviously we have independent release schedule. So we are releasing much more often, multiple releases a year, obviously. We have big releases that come with the public message, commercial message, and then we have quiet releases that we come out with improvements. And we're learning all the time. So we really got much more kind of bold and agile in terms of releasing. So all in all, I would say that when you actually go mobile, it's going to be hard. It's going to be really heavy. It's going to take a lot of time and money. It's going to be a completely different clock speed that you ever done before. And then you also will be you will be required from your users to much more engagement and much more faster updates. So people don't wait for 6 months for an update. They actually want those much more faster. But on the other side, you will learn completely new way of working. You will have much better engagement with the users. And I think it will have an influence, as we saw, to almost every aspect of the operation. So I really encourage you guys to take the learning and consider what it means to go mobile. Thank you so much. I hope this is entertaining and exciting.